quickly that many drivers never realized what was happening until it was too late. A man standing near the riverbank saw the bridge fall in sections like a folding deck of cards. The truck driver who survived the fall said it felt like the road simply disappeared beneath him.
Ever die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs. Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him. Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Looked like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.
At 5 a.m. on a cold November morning in 1980, a seasoned British police officer was driving a quiet stretch of road near Todmorden when he rounded a bend and found something blocking his path. An object sitting in the roadway that made no mechanical sense. No visible means of support. Should not have been there at all. Moments later, his patrol car was stopped. His radio was silent, and his memory of the next 25 minutes would simply vanish. When it came to his boots were damaged, this notebook contained a sketch he didn't remember drawing, and the road behind him bore markings no one could fully explain. This was not a rumor, not a civilian sighting, not a story told years later for attention. This was a police report filed by a man trained to observe, document, and testify, and would become one of the most unsettling UFO encounters ever recorded in Britain. This week on Beyond the Shadows podcast, we are discussing the Todmorden incident.
Yes, the Todmorden incident. That's right. You heard me. You heard me correctly. Welcome in, everybody, to Beyond the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Victus.
And I'm Hazel.
And this is Beyond the Shadows podcast, where we record a live podcast, one take, no edits, and try to figure out if this week's case is really paranormal or just bullshit. Tonight we are talking about the Todmorden incident, a police officer, a UFO, and missing time. A case that begins with a routine patrol on a quiet English road and ends with missing time, physical evidence, and an official police report that refuses to stay buried. We had so many new followers last week. Thank you. Before we get going, I want to give a quick shout out to everybody that followed last week. Mass quantities of followers last week. For some reason, I didn't get any of the notifications. So if you followed last week, we can't give you a shout out this week because your accounts are set to private and we can't see your names. It's okay. Stay private. That's fine. Totally fine. I'm on the upswing, or I guess you could say the downswing of a minor cold right now, so I hope I sound okay. I'm sure I sound a little nasally. Do I sound like I'm starting to get sick?
I mean, kind of, but I think it just adds to the mystique of your voice. I think you sound wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Makes my voice deeper. You're going to hear lots of sniffles today, is what I'm getting at. But anywho, thank you to everybody that followed last week. You weren't ignored. We saw your follows. I don't have a list of names. I like to have a list of names because I like to give shout outs to whoever follows.
Maybe they're staying private just in case you get in trouble for that, coming to get me in Area 51 thing.
Yeah, because they are looking for people. Disclosure's coming, and those of us that are talking about it are going to get scooped up fast. Sorry, I'm taking just a second to rearrange a little bit. I'm playing with a new layout here on the screens. Welcome in, everybody. This is, excuse me, wow. Yeah, one more window to reorient here. There we go. There's the information I was looking for. This is Season 3, Episode 8 of Beyond the Shadows podcast. Welcome in, everybody, but Before we dive into tonight's case, it is time for this week's news and paranormal. The stories making waves right now in the world of UFOs, hauntings, cryptids, and the like of weirdness that refuses to stay quiet. Let's dive right into it. So first up, renewed attention around unexplained aerial activity reported by multiple commercial pilots during routine flights. Several crews described objects pacing aircraft, making sudden altitude changes and vanishing without radar confirmation. No military exercises were reported in the area, and aviation authorities are once again using the phrase "no known explanation." Next up, investigators at Skinwalker Ranch have released new details about anomalous equipment failures during overnight experiments. According to the team, batteries drained simultaneously across multiple devices, GPS readings spiked erratically, and motion sensors triggered without any visible source, all within a narrow time window. Now, this is not anything new, so if it's Skinwalker Ranch interests you, go check out our episode back at Season 1. And over in the UK, residents near an old industrial site report a surge in shadow figure sightings and unexplained electrical disturbances. Local historians point out that the area sits on land tied to multiple 19th century accidents, reigning debate over whether traumatic events can leave environmental imprints, which is also something we talked about in Season 1, especially over there in the UK. I'll try not to deviate too much on that, but in cryptid news, hikers near the Pacific Northwest report a large bipedal figure crossing a fire road just before dawn. Footage is inconclusive, grainy, distant, and frustratingly familiar, but investigators noted the timing, location, and behavior match dozens of historical reports from the region. Meanwhile, a university psychologist department has reopened research in the so-called entity encounter paralysis phenomenon. Cases where witnesses report waking immobile while perceiving figures in the room. Researchers insist it's neurological, but critics argue the consistency of descriptions across cultures deserves deeper scrutiny. That is something we did cover in Season 2, Shadow Figures and the Hat Man. We talk about it all the time. Shadow figures are very consistent. From South America, social media lit up after residents captured strange lights hovering above a coastal town for nearly 40 minutes. Officials cited drones, but no operators come forward, and flight patterns appear inconsistent with known consumer commercial models. And last but not least, archival UFO reports from the late 1970s and 1980s are being digitized and re-examined by independent researchers, revealing striking similarities to modern encounters. Same shapes, same missing time, same official confusion, different decade. And as always, coincidence, misidentification, or something genuinely unexplained, we'll leave that up to you. But one thing's clear, whatever's going on out there hasn't stopped. That's better at blending in. And with that, we'll get into tonight's case. But before we do, I need to say, so I did my best to reach out to the gentleman at the heart of this investigation. What's his name? Alan Godfrey. There we go. That's the name. Alan Godfrey. I did my best to reach out to Alan Godfrey. After trying to call him for like 3 weeks in a row, he finally answered the phone, which
Hello,
Oh.
is why... guys. Great show last week.
Hey, James, how's it going?
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Very glad you're here. Yeah, thanks for the ego boost. We needed that. It seems the numbers were pretty good from last week. We're both very pleased. Well, thanks for being here.
Sounds like you might be keeping me around a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. I would rather do this with you than without you, for sure.
I would rather do this with you than sit in the other room, for sure.
Yeah, because usually when we're doing this, she's just in the next room over, kind of listening through the wall. But now you're involved. You can't get out of this no matter what you do. So I did my best to reach out to, I've already forgotten his name. Yeah, Alan Godfrey. Yeah, I did my best to reach out to Alan Godfrey, and he finally answered after 3 weeks, which is why we're doing the case this week, and got him on the phone. And I said, hey, man, person to person, man to man, did this stuff really happen? And he got real quiet at the other end of the phone. He's like, hey, I need to tell you. Before I do, I have one question to ask you about it. Like, yeah, man, anything. I was like, I just got to know. And I need to know one thing. Yeah, what's up? You know what he said? What shirt are you wearing today? I take great joy in doing that. I really do. So, I am actively wearing my, oh geez, what's his, I always forget this guy's name. Stephen Rhodes. I'm wearing my Stephen Rhodes shirt tonight. Yes, Stephen Rhodes. This is a Stephen Rhodes household. No sign of intelligent life anywhere. Yes. And of course, don't talk to strangers.
Yes, to be clear, that does say don't talk to strangers. I
Do
think
not.
I can only see talk to strangers, but don't.
Unless your strangers look like that, tall and green with big bulgy eyes, then you can talk to them.
Hey, so I actually wore a fun shirt today too.
She wore a shirt.
I did. It's a Gouda Thomas shirt. It says late night snack. And it's got ramen on it because you love ramen.
I love ramen.
So-
I eat it all the time.
And fun fact, we have matching of these shirts, but we decided not to be that
Oh,
couple
I didn't know
tonight.
you were going to wear that one.
That's okay.
That's fine. We'll keep it mixed. We'll mix it up. It's fine. It's totally fine. Gudetama. We love Gudetama here. I have a few. Yeah, I have a Gudetama right over there hanging up. Well, it used to be the background. Now it's the side ground. So, before we get going, how did you like last week? Did you enjoy it?
So I liked last week because I felt like we actually got to have a conversation and bring everybody else into it and kind of make some decisions together. And, you know, I mean, we didn't officially decide. I think we're still undecided, but that's okay. We don't have to solve all the problems.
No, that's the point of having the best point of having two people in the investigation is, especially when it comes to me and you, is I'm the one that wants to believe that everything is real, everything, no matter how crazy and sideways it is. I want to believe it's real. You're quite a lot more level-headed than I am.
Well, I mean, I think there are some things that I do believe in, and I'm excited to get to those. But there are all these little intricacies that I think about with these kind of things, like, you know, how does the person's environment impact what's going on, and how does society impact what's going on, what they're experiencing. So it's really neat to kind of think about that in terms of what has been really popularized, right?
Yeah.
So.
You're gonna love it when Aeon comes back, because he is so well versed in so many scientific things that we would get to talking about. Like, geez, I can remember one time we were talking about loosely about Bigfoot, because it's one of the subjects we refuse to cover on this podcast because it's been beaten to death. There's nothing more that we could say about it for now. And I just happened to mention that maybe it's an interdimensional being. And he's like, oh, interestingly you say that. Here, let me rattle off some, 40, 50 sentences about interdimensional travel and interdimensional beings and the science behind it. And he knew it. He knew, like, specifics and numbers, and he knew everything. He's so sharp, and I can't wait for it. I can't wait to have him back.
Well, that's why they've got him in Area 51 right now. So
Yeah.
just
Once they let him, I'm starting to think that he let himself be captured so he can do reconnaissance. And that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. Any hoots. Are y'all ready for tonight's case? Because this one's different. I've only just heard of this one in passing. And I'll be honest, I passed it up once because I thought it was similar to one that we did previously. I'm looking at the video list. I'm trying to think of which one that was. It was season 2. Geez, it was the one with the cop. It's very similar to this, and oh, their skin. Oh, there we go. The Val Johnson UFO incident. This is season 2, episode 18. So lots and lots of evidence in that one, and it directly involves a single police officer in Australia, which is kind of what we're dealing with here. I think, no, this is in England. Yes, west of Yorkshire. So this is in England. The other one was in Australia, but it directly dealt with one police officer directly interacting with the UFO. And I remember seeing this in passing and thinking, oh, it's just the same as the other one. I just assumed it was, because sometimes some of these cases will have multiple different names, depending on where the research was done. Not everybody wants their research to be labeled under the same label as everybody else, because they don't want, if me and you own our own investigation companies, we're both doing investigation of the same thing. We don't want to name it the same, the Hoop-de-Hoo incident, and I call it the Hoop-de-Hoo incident. And then later on, somebody references the Hoop-de-Hoo incident, and nobody knows exactly where the information came from. So a lot of people will give different investigations and different names to separate themselves. So it's just lending legitimacy from different investigative groups. But the majority of our cases come from single sources. But this one, I just assumed it was the same as the Val Johnson UFO incident. And it is not, in fact, the same. It is very different. All right. Let's see, Heffy popped in. Yes. All right, you jerks. You guys ready to get into this? I think we're ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let me take my medicine before we get going. I mentioned it in passing to Hef last night when we were playing some video games. I might reach out to Voodoo Ranger and see if they'll sponsor this podcast.
Wouldn't that be neat?
It would be great.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
I'll put a giant Voodoo Ranger banner across this podcast. I do not care. It's just all I drink. The Voodoo Ranger every Sunday evening. It's always Voodoo Ranger. The most bang for your buck, folks.
Not currently sponsored, but willing. Right?
Open. We are open to sponsors. We have 0 sponsors for this podcast. The only ads you're going to run into is if you don't have a premium account on whatever platform you're watching it on. But I will say, for those of you that watch it live, if you watch live on Twitch and you have Amazon Prime, you do get one free subscription point for any channel on Twitch. I wish I could, because it would just be like giving myself money, but say you had your own Amazon Prime account, you could go to Twitch and sub to this channel, and it'll give a little, only give a few bucks to the channel, but it doesn't cost you anything because you're already paying for Amazon Prime. But you could watch it on Twitch and there'll be no ads.
Well, that's really cool, because who likes ads? I mean, I feel like that's a good deal.
It is a good deal.
Yeah.
I'm not, I know there's a lot of controversy right now with a lot of the streaming services, especially Twitch and Discord, stuff like that right now. We are dealing with a little bit of a connection issue, so bear with me just a second, folks.
Not surprising. We're having some weather here.
We're dropping packets left and right. We're gonna hold out for just a minute before we get going. We're gonna wait for this connection to get a little bit better before we start moving forward. I wasn't actually anticipating a poor connection tonight, but if it happens, it happens. So if you're watching live and we lose connection, we will try a couple times to bring everything back up. But if it doesn't come back with a good enough strength, then we will record and post later. It seems like our frames are back. Yeah, we're running somewhere close to 6,000 kilobits per second right now, which is our coasting speed. I'm just gonna do a quick speed test. Connection might get a little choppy for just a second. I just want to make sure we're still running at full speed before we get going.
Definitely don't want connection drop.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we're doing good. We got a good solid connection. It might have just been a little hiccup. Good thing I noticed it. All right. James, give me a shout if you're still connected. I know the connection was a little choppy there for a second. Give me a thumbs up or a hey, how are you if you're still there, sir. Just want to make sure nobody got lost. It seems like everything's reconnected. Yeah. All right. Well, our connection looks solid at my end. I can only speak for what information I have in front of me. It looks fine, so let's roll on. All right. Now that I'm done stressing about our connection. We pay for such good internet, and it's just not great sometimes. All
Maybe
right.
that's some, I don't know, some evidence for us.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a conspiracy. Maybe this one is real.
Yeah, it seems like every time we get to the good ones, there's always some type of connection issue. The government is listening. They're actively listening. And they're like, you know what? Interrupt this internet for just a second. Just enough to get people to stop watching. All right, we only lost 4%. All right, we're back up full speed. Let's get rolling before things get choppy over here. And again, this is Beyond the Shadows podcast, season 3, episode 8, the Todmorden incident, a police officer, UFO, and missing time. This is Act 1, everybody. Act 1. Oh, connected. Thank you, James. I think,
Connected.
yes, fantastic. There we go. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is Act 1, everybody. Act 1. So Todmorden is not the kind of place where you expect a UFO story to begin. Nope. We're getting a double.
Connected.
There it is, our double message. It's fine. Thank you so much. It's not the kind of place you expect a UFO story to begin. That's a little hot. Let me turn that down a bit. It's a small market town surrounded by hills, narrow roads, and long stretches of countryside that go quiet very quickly once the sun goes down. In 1980, it was even quieter. No nightlight to speak of, minimal traffic after midnight, and the kind of place where police patrol usually meant checking doors and watching for drunk drivers, and waiting for the end of shift. And that's exactly the mindset Police Constable Alan Godfrey was in during the early morning hours of November 28th. Godfrey was not new to the job. He was a trained, experienced officer with a reputation for being steady and methodical. He wasn't a thrill seeker, and he wasn't someone known for chasing strange stories. And that matters because when police officers make reports, especially unusual ones, their credibility becomes their entire foundation of the case. Godfrey wasn't a man who needed attention, and he wasn't someone who stood to gain anything by inventing what would soon be one of Britain's most unsettling UFO encounters. Shortly before 5 a.m., Godfrey was driving along Burnley Road, a stretch of roadway that cuts through open terrain and industrial edges near Todmorden. It was dark, cold, and foggy in a way that northern England often is at that hour. Visibility wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to see the road clearly. As he came around the bend, his headlights picked up on something directly ahead of him. Something sitting in the roadway. At first glance, he assumed it was a vehicle. That was the logical explanation. Maybe a truck stalled, maybe a car abandoned after an accident. But as he slowed down and got closer, that assumption fell apart almost immediately.
Hey.
Blip. Hey, Blip's here, everybody. Welcome in, Blip. You've come just in time. We've just started. We're only 1 or 2 paragraphs down. Welcome in, friend. Glad you're here. What he was looking at didn't resemble a car, a lorry, or anything mechanical he recognized. The object appeared to be hovering slightly above the road surface, not resting on tires or supports. It had a diamond-like shape roughly the width of the road, and its surface seemed dark, matte, and solid. Godfrey stopped his patrol car. He later described feeling confused rather than afraid at first, trying to mentally categorize what he was seeing. Police training teaches observation before reaction, and that's exactly what he did. He stepped out of the vehicle to get a better look, keeping his distance. The object didn't make any engine noise. There was no flashing lights in the conventional sense, no exhaust, no movement that suggested it was about to take off or drive away. What struck him most wasn't that it didn't look unfinished or improvised. It didn't resemble experimental equipment or something that had crashed. It looked deliberate, like it was exactly where it was supposed to be. Godfrey attempted the radio to radio the station, but the radio did not respond. Whether it had malfunctioned or lost signal isn't entirely clear, but the timing is important. He wasn't standing alone in a dark road facing an object that made no sense, with no immediate way to call for backup. Even so, he didn't panic. He reached for his police notebook and began to document what he was seeing, sketching the object's shape as accurately as he could. And that sketch would later become one of the most famous elements of the case. But at the time, it was just a routine procedure. Officers write things down. They draw diagrams. They document anomalies. Godfrey was doing exactly what he had been trained to do. And then, without warning, everything stopped. There was no bright flash reported, no dramatic blast of light or sound. One moment he was standing there observing and documenting, and the next, he wasn't. The next thing Godfrey remembered was being back inside his patrol car, driving down the road. His headlights were on. The object was gone. And he had absolutely no memory of returning to the vehicle or restarting his patrol. That gap would become the central mystery of the Todmorden incident. 25 minutes unaccounted for. No recollection of movement, no memory of panic or flight. Just a clean break in consciousness, followed by a sudden return to normal activity. And as he continued driving, the unease set in. Something was wrong. His uniform felt off. When he later examined it himself more closely, he noticed his boots were scuffed in a way that didn't match normal wear. His trouser leg showed signs of disturbance, as though he'd been kneeling or dragged against a rough surface. These weren't dramatic tears or damage, but they were enough to raise questions, especially since he couldn't remember doing anything that would cause them. And back at the station, Godfrey did what police officers are expected to do. He filed a report. Round of applause for a police officer actually filing a police report. Yes. Yes, it did used to happen. Back in the days of yore, it used to happen. Police officers actually used to do their job. Yeah, believe it or not, despite what today's social climate's telling you. So this is where the case separates itself from countless UFO stories that rely on memory alone. Godfrey's encounter was documented almost immediately, not years later. His notebook still contained the sketch of the object drawn before the missing time occurred, and that detail is critical. The drawing wasn't reconstructed after the fact. It existed before whatever happened during those lost 25 minutes. And when other officers reviewed the area, they discovered markings on the road surface near where Godfrey said the object had been. Scrape-like impressions, circular disturbances, and signs that something heavy, or at least something interacting with the ground, had been present. No clear explanation was offered for those marks, and no conventional vehicle was identified as the source. From the very beginning, the Todmorden incident refused to sit neatly in a category. It wasn't a fleeting light in the sky. It wasn't a distant object observed by civilians. It involved a trained observer, physical traces, contemporaneous documentation, great word by the way, and significant lapse in time that could not be explained through stress, fatigue, or simple distraction. And this was only the beginning, because as investigators pressed further, and as Godfrey tried to understand what happened during those missing minutes, the case would take a turn even skeptics would find difficult to ignore. So, that's the end of Act 1. Where you sitting?
So remind me again, what time was this?
Early morning. I don't think we...
5 a.m.? Is that what they said? 5 a.m.?
All he said was early morning, shortly before 5 a.m.
Yeah, shortly before 5 a.m. Okay. Okay.
So this is like prime early morning hours. Not a lot of people are going to be out at this time.
I'm just thinking, have you ever driven home from somewhere or been driving and you just feel like you've lost time? Like you don't remember really because you're kind of tired how you got from point A to point B, but you got there, but you don't remember the trip itself and you were not under any like...
Yeah.
And so I do understand that there is something that happens in the middle of this, but at the same time, I'm ready to hear more because I'm like, I just don't know for sure. And then also the police report itself. I wonder how that reads exactly. That would be kind of cool to look at.
All right, so I'm scrolling. Give me just a second. I'm going back to the second episode of this season. So season 3, episode 2, the Your Brain is Lying to You episode. We actually talked about this in detail. This is a very common thing called time distortion, where you'll be driving along, like making a drive that you do use regularly. So like back when I was working at Walmart, it was almost an hour drive to work every night. You know, I would make the drive and sometimes it would feel like an hour. Sometimes it would feel like 15 minutes. Your brain just shuts off and you become like your brain goes into autopilot mode, essentially. It's only collecting necessary information. And that's when, like, if you're doing something monotonous or repetitive, that's what, you know, it's like factory workers will just lose a sense of time because they're doing a repetitive motion that doesn't necessarily require any brain power. It's not an uncommon thing. It's an actual temporal thing that happens to people. It's happened to me before, many times. But we did talk about it in season 3, episode 2 this season, if you want to go back and listen to that. Really wonderful episode. It's called Your Brain is Lying to You.
But in the times that it happened to you, I think what you're getting at is you did not see what you believe to be an alien spaceship in the side of the road and pull over and investigate. And so that's where the difference lies. Yeah,
exactly. I've never like arrived at my destination and said, oh, well, that took 30 minutes longer than it should have. I wanted it to happen, but it never happened. Fortunately, I've never been a party to actual missing time. I've racked my brain more times than I care to mention just to see if it's actually happened to me, but I can't think of any instance in my life where I've had the actual missing time.
I can't think of any either, but at the same time, again, with the actual police report for this case, I just kind of wonder how things were worded, because I think about, like, if it's 5 a.m. and you lost 25 minutes of time, let's say maybe you fell asleep or something else happened in that 25 minutes that you don't really want to put in the report. I mean, it could be that we invented this. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sold yet, but that's normal for me. I'm always skeptical.
Well, I do want to point out that it is important to say that he was standing and he was on his feet, supposedly, when this all happened. But I want to point out something. And this is something that we talked about back in season 1, one of our only 2-parter episodes, where we talked about the Betty and Barney Hill incident. So I'm already seeing a parallel. So this is 1980s. This was roughly 30-something years after the Betty and Barney Hill incident. Barney Hill had some of the same things happen to him. So this was the early 1950s. So I think it was 1952 or 1953 when Betty and Barney Hill were abducted. Barney Hill, as soon as he began remembering, like, his timeline line back up, first thing he noticed was he also had scuff marks on his shoes, and he had like drag marks on like the shins of his pants, which in the 1950s is a really obvious thing to happen, because 1950s people actually dressed really nicely.
They took
Slacks.
care of their clothes.
Yeah, absolutely. Polished shoes, clean pressed iron pants every single day. But what I'm getting at is we have a parallel here between this and the Betty Barney Hill incident, where he lost 25 minutes and immediately he notices, I've got scuffs on my shoes and my pants are, in a sort of disarray. And a funny detail he brings up, which is something that I've noticed, like sometimes I will dress up when we go out. I will, like, I can feel when my shirt is crooked or my jacket's not sitting correctly on me. And he noticed immediately after regaining his sense of time that his uniform didn't feel right. Anybody that's ever worn a shirt and tie for a long period of time will know that after a couple hours, you'll feel the tie kind of shift to one side. That's why you get that classic kind of motion in movies, people straightening their tie because they feel that. And I mean, it's tied around your neck. You're going to feel it when it's off center because it feels like it's pulling off to the side because it comes down into your shirt. I don't know what his police uniform entailed. I'm assuming it had a tie. This was the 1980s. Even police officers today have ties, don't they?
You know what? I don't think all of them do. I've definitely seen some uniforms that don't. And I guess it kind of depends on if it's dress uniform or not.
I'm looking up what the
Let's
police
look and
uniform
see.
looked like. Oh, wow. Yeah, so they did have a tie. They had a tie and a jacket and a shirt. A very neatly pressed uniform. So I understand what he's getting at is his uniform didn't feel right. So that makes a lot of sense. But awesome, kudos on this guy for picking out details. He's doing what a police officer should do and finding details, making note of them. And it is bringing some really interesting kind of concepts, to light almost immediately. I will say I did try to find the actual handwritten police report, but there just are, it just doesn't exist. I'm sure it exists somewhere. They just haven't released it.
Does it?
Oh yeah, now y'all can see my leg when I sit funny. Yeah, my big old leg, my sexy knee. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You gonna put that away?
Sorry, that is the premium paid version of this show where you get to.
Beyond the Shadows podcast, best viewers stream.com.
Oh my
Remove the
gosh.
space.
Oh my gosh, they're right on it tonight, aren't they?
Boo.
Let's. Oh wow, chat's not up on OBS. That's weird. That is really weird. Okay, cool. Give me just a second, folks. I need to hop into Twitch and ban somebody right quick. We don't do bots here. We don't do bots. Oh look, Hef streaming. I hope. Gosh, got to go full screen on this. There we go. Let's ban this person. Best viewers, huh? Suspicious user, ban evader. Where is the report? There we go. Report.
Wow, there's like a lot of crazy, wacky things you can report somebody for.
Yeah, they're very thorough. Twitch is very thorough about All right, that bot is out of here. Round of applause for that bot, everybody. You're gone. Goodbye. Get out of here, bot. Nobody wants you here. Now I messed my screen all up. Jeez. There we go. We're back to where we belong. Hey, but thanks for the number. Appreciate the view. Boost the numbers. So I guess I don't really mind bots. I guess. Ah, jeez. I screwed this whole window up. I screwed it all the way up. Oh, that's Twitch. Yeah, we can close that. What was here? What was here? OBS. What was here? Nothing. Okay, there we go. We're back to normal. Oh no, we're not. Now the other screen is messed up. Oh my gosh. There we go. Wait, no, that was the other way around. Jeez, excuse me, folks. We're getting there. This is what happens when... No, that was OBS. Oh my gosh. Yeah, OBS was over here. I'm tripping. I'm sorry.
Technical difficulties.
That's what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, but chat's not there. That's so weird. I don't know why chat isn't there. It's fine. We got chat. We can still hear chat. We can see chat. Any hoots. So, before we were rudely interrupted by a horrible bot. So yeah, we're dealing with classic abduction scenario so far. We have missing time, albeit only 25 minutes. He immediately knows his scuffs on his shoes, scuffs on his pants, like he'd been dragged. And the reason I got at the Betty and Barney Hill thing was because Betty remembered Barney because he actually put up a little bit of a fight, and their only way to get him on the ship was to completely put him out. And they drug him. Like one person on each arm lifted him and drug him. And so his feet were drugged all the way through. Like they even found like the trails of where his feet drug in the dirt. So major parallel between this case and Betty and Barney Hill because of the scuffing on his shoes. I will say it's strange that he didn't immediately panic. A lot of times with people have missing time, there is a panic involved because they try to figure out why they're missing time, and it isn't always immediately clear. And for some people, they don't always lean towards the paranormal as an odd idea of why they have missing time. They'll try to figure out what was I doing that made me lose 25 minutes. Surely I was just occupied. But I think for him, his logical brain kicked in, and he decided to head straight back to the police station because he was standing when he lost time. And then when he came back, he was sitting in his police car driving down the road.
That is so wild to me because I can only imagine the way that I pictured it was like if you fall asleep at the wheel, right? The natural instinct would be, or if you run off the road, even if you're not asleep. I mean, I've definitely overcorrected before as a teenager. We'd just running off the road a little bit and then jerking back over. Mm-hmm. And so coming to, having lost that much time while driving, I feel like you're right. It's kind of shocking to me that he didn't just kind of jerk a little bit.
Right,
or like
right.
have...
I feel like when he came to, and I'm just filling in the blanks, we don't have like a perfect set of circumstances of what happened. I feel like when he came to, he was just rolling, like slowly, which is a little different. It's unique for an alien abduction case because we don't see a lot of people that are set back into motion, but we see a lot of people just sitting in their car. In fact, majority of the time, people will come back from missing time and they'll be sitting in the car with their hand on their wheels, or with their hands on the wheel. The car will be off, and then as soon as they become clear-headed, their car will start. Which was the case for Betty and Barney Hill. this was different. This one, his car was on and running, and he was moving forward. It was a little different, but I do agree with you. Yeah, it's strange that he didn't like, oh shit, I'm driving, and like, swerve a couple times, but maybe he did, and he was too embarrassed to say something. It's hard to say. Good gracious. My nose is running. I know I'm okay. I'm okay right now. Well, let's get into Act 2. Let's see where the story is going to take us. Before we're once again interrupted by another bot. So this is Act 2, everybody. Act 2. In the hours and days following the incident, what unsettled Alan Godfrey the most wasn't fear, it was confusion. Fear is something police officers are trained to process. Confusion, especially the kind that lingers without explanation, is harder to shake. Godfrey knew something had happened on Burnley Road, but he couldn't access it. The missing 25 minutes weren't fuzzy or distorted, they were simply absent. Like someone had cut a segment out of a film reel and spliced it back together. And at first, supervisors approached the case cautiously. A police officer reporting a UFO is not an administrative nightmare anybody wants to deal with. And there was an understandable push to find a conventional explanation. Fatigue was considered, to answer your question earlier. Godfrey had been working long hours, but nothing in his schedule suggested extreme exhaustion. Stress was raised as a possibility, but again, there was no record of unusual emotional strain, and he wasn't responding to a high-risk call. He wasn't involved in a chase, and he was on just a routine patrol. And if the object had never been mentioned, the missing time alone would have raised questions. Officers don't typically lose a half hour without realizing it, and they certainly don't resume driving as if nothing happened. Godfrey...
My money is on donut overdose.
Very possible. It was the 1980s, so that was... Yeah, there's a reason we meme that today, is because it was a thing. Godfrey himself had tried to rationalize it. He considered whether he might have suffered a brief blackout or medical episode, but there were no symptoms before or after. No dizziness, no confusion beyond the missing time. No medical history that would suggest a seizure or fainting spell. Doctors later found nothing physically wrong with him. But then there were the small details that wouldn't go away. The damage to his boots, for one. Police footwear is built for wear, but when the scuffing was uneven and fresh, inconsistent with walking on pavement or standing on a roadside shoulder, his trousers also showed signs of pressure and abrasion that suggested movement he couldn't remember. None of it proved anything on its own, but together they painted a picture that didn't align with the simple lapse in attention. And more troubling was his notebook. The sketch he had drawn of the object was clear, deliberate, and labeled. It showed a diamond-shaped craft with a raised central dome, something he distinctly remembered drawing before the missing time occurred. The fact that the drawing existed at all anchored his memory. He knew he had been there. He knew he had observed something real enough to document, but he couldn't explain what had happened next. And as word of the incident spread quietly within police circles, reactions were mixed. Some colleagues were supportive, noting Godfrey's reliability and professionalism. Others were skeptical, uncomfortable with the implications. A few treated it as a joke, a kind of gallows humor that emerges when people don't know how to handle something deeply strange. And that response would only intensify once the story reached the public. Local media picked it up cautiously at first, framing it as an unusual incident rather than a definitive UFO encounter. But once the words missing time entered the conversation, interest escalated quickly. UFO researchers reached out. Journalists asked questions, and with every retelling, the pressure on Godfrey increased. He didn't seek the attention. In fact, he tried to avoid it. But the story had momentum now, and worse, it was evolving. It was during this period that the idea of hypnotic regression was introduced. Hypnosis, especially in the context of UFO cases, is deeply controversial. Supporters argue it can help recover buried memories blocked by trauma or shock, but critics counter that it's highly susceptible to suggestion, imagination, and unintentional leading by the hypnotist. Godfrey was aware of the risks, but he was also desperate for answers, and 25 minutes of his life were missing, and every attempt to recall them consciously had failed. This is where things start to get spooky. Under hypnosis, fragments began to surface. Godfrey described being taken aboard a craft. He recalled small beings, non-human in appearance, conducting an examination. He spoke of medical procedures, restraint, a sense of helplessness. These memories did not emerge dramatically or all at once. They came in pieces, often accompanied by emotional distress and physical reactions. For believers, this was confirmation. The classic elements of an alien abduction narrative were present: missing time, examination, non-human entities, and suppressed memory. For skeptics, it was the moment the case lost credibility. Hypnosis, they argued, had filled the gaps with crucial imagery drawn from decades of science fiction and UFO lore. Godfrey himself was caught between those interpretations. He didn't claim absolute certainty about what the hypnotic sessions revealed. What he did say consistently was that the experience felt real to him, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. He didn't describe it as a dream. He described it as a memory he couldn't access without help. During later hypnosis sessions, Godfrey described encountering a figure he recognized not as an alien, but as a human. A man resembling a doctor, dressed in what appeared to be a suit. This human presence didn't fit neatly into the standard abduction narrative, and it unsettled both believers and skeptics alike. Some interpreted it as symbolic. Others suggested it pointed towards psychological stress. A few darker theories proposed something else entirely. Whatever the explanation, it introduced a new layer of discomfort. The experience wasn't just strange, it was inconsistent. And as public interest grew, so did scrutiny. Critics questioned why a police officer would agree to hypnosis at all. UFO researchers debated the reliability of the recovered memories. Medical professionals weighed in competing interpretations, and through it all, Godfrey remained largely unchanged in his position. Something happened, he couldn't explain it, and the official record reflected that. What's important here is not whether the hypnotic memories were accurate in a literal sense. What matters is that they existed, they were documented, and they became part of the case's permanent record. The Todmorden incident was no longer just an object in the road. It was about what happens when an unexplained event fractures memory itself. And by this point, the damage was done. Godfrey's career would never fully escape the shadow of that morning. His name became inseparable from the case, regardless of his wishes. And the more he tried to move on, the more the story followed him. Because unanswered questions have a way of resurfacing. And then Act 3, the focus shifts away from the memory perceptions and onto something harder to dismiss. Physical evidence, independent witnesses, and why Todmorden would soon become known for far more than a single strange night. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm piecing things together, and I'm wondering how much this story has shifted and changed over time once it hit popularity. Like, what details have changed.
Right.
If we don't have the original report, I don't necessarily think this man would do something that's going to, or tell this story with the thought that it's going to potentially harm his career. But I don't know, because at the end of the day, he's just a human, right? So, like, the things that he's saying under hypnosis, the hypnosis part of it really gets to me, because it is open to suggestion. And if he already had an idea of what he had been telling people, then it could have all just been something that elaborated further on what he'd already said in his
Right.
report, whether that was true or not, right? So I don't know.
So I am a little torn about hypnosis. There are a couple extraterrestrial hypnosis sessions. One specific hypnotist, specifically one, has been proven to insert suggestions. And once he figures out some people are suggested hypnosis, not everybody can be hypnotized, but there are some who are particularly more susceptible to hypnosis. He did find a specific group of people that were very susceptible to hypnosis, and he ended up manipulating them. And in the end, it destroyed his credibility, but he was, at the time, one of the most widely celebrated hypnotists when it came to regression hypnosis pertaining to UFOs and alien abductions. So that one case aside, I am still a little gun shy about it. But we do have. Go ahead. What do you got?
Can I ask how much the average salary was for a police officer in the UK at this point?
Let's find out. So in the 1980s, the average was $13,000 to $16,000 a year, which was significantly higher than the UK national average wage at the time, which was around $6,000 to $85,000 a year. That was according to according to the UK Parliament. So higher than normal.
Higher than average, the average salary at the time.
Yeah.
I'm just, it's 1980. There have already been sightings that have been reported. We've already talked about some of those tonight and just reviewed those, plus all of the movies that had come out. I'm just wondering, could this be a case where someone wanted to create a story to try to sell it to have a little boost
I get
in
it.
their income?
I get it. Who's making money? That's the big question we like to ask. Well, it's funny you say that. Do you want to see what the UFO looked like? Do you want to see the sketch?
Yes, I would love to see a
Okay.
sketch.
Let's switch over so everybody can see this. Here's our sketch. This is his actual sketch. This, in my opinion, lends to authenticity because it's unlike any other UFO encounter we've seen. He wasn't lying when he said it was like diamond shaped. I feel like I've seen a UFO like this, but not before 1980. It does say specifically, give some dimensions: 20 foot wide, 14 foot tall, counterclockwise rotation, hovering 5 foot off the road surface. Pretty decent little sketch for a guy seeing a UFO for the first time. Gotta admit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm still torn, but this definitely does question my theories a little bit.
So, if Aeon and Paul were here, they would love this next part. I have for you a very special piece of evidence. That's right.
That's crazy.
Oh wait, that's the wrong.
I already feel like they would have loved the previous act talking about hypnosis.
Yes.
So
Yeah, Paul would have loved it. We will get Paul back in here. He's already got some approval from some of his clients to use audio from a regression to hypnosis session. Aeon and I talked about that a little bit before he was scooped up by the government and thrown underneath Area 51. But Give me just a second. I'm going to pull this up. I have a very special piece of evidence. Took me some time to find it. So believe it or not, in 1980, somebody actually recorded video of the regression hypnosis session. So I was unable to find the entire video, but I was able to find a snip of it. It is notoriously difficult to get our hands on, but I was able to find a snip. Let me pull this up. Oh no! Oh no! Stop! Stop! Oh, all right, everybody. Volume up, because we have audio. We're gonna go full screen. We're gonna bring this as full screen as possible here. Give me just a second to play with this layout. I want to bring this to the front. And we're going to make this as, yeah, we're just going to go full screen on this. So this is going to have subtitles. It is not a very long clip. This is only 1 minute, 55 seconds long. So, small trigger warning for those who are triggered by somebody powerful emotional reactions to something. We did give this warning in the Betty and Barney Hill incident because we listened to almost 30 minutes of their regression hypnosis session, and it was horrifying. Absolute nightmare fuel. But it was just audio because it was in the 1950s, where this is video and audio. So if you can't hear clearly, there will be subtitles at the bottom, and we may watch this a couple times just to catch everything. So here we go. This is a snip of Officer Godfrey's regression hypnosis session. Here we go. Sorry, I was muted. I think you saw me trying to edit this video yesterday, but I think it's your first time seeing and hearing it together. What are you thinking?
I mean, it's convincing on the first view. It feels like he thinks it's real, especially with the arm going up over his eyes and the deep inhalation to indicate he's distressed. It feels real. So when we did the Betty and Barney Hill investigation, we had noted
very similar reactions. The sudden sharp inhalation, the way that Paul explained it was when you're reacting in a hypnotic state, you're at your, it's like childlike reactions. So like think of like the same type of reactions you would have if you're having a nightmare. So like over dramatic, very very flamboyant gestures. The deep inhalation happened a lot in the Betty and Barney Hill regression hypnosis tapes. I do want to point something out. Let's go back for just a second. We're gonna go back, and I want to adjust this again. Now that we've all seen it once, let me slide this thing back. So there was a part in this. I'm gonna mute it. There was a part in this that I want to point out. Ooh, excuse me. So this is common. The when he asks, he says they're horrible. Who's horrible? He says he doesn't want to talk about it. That's a common thing with regression hypnosis, where somebody says that they don't want to talk about something because initially that memory is repressed, and the way that abductees revisit this, it becomes like a physical reaction to these memories. They're physically remembering, like it's not like you think a hypnotic regression session would be. It's not just them watching a videotape over and over again. What it is they're reliving that moment again. And when they're reliving that moment, the emotional part comes through, but it's amplified because you are in a suggested hypnotic state, so your emotions are heightened. Like we've all seen the movies where people get hypnotized to do regressions, and they react so violently the hypnotist has to, all right, when I count back to 3, you're going to come back 1, 2, 3, snap, and they're back. That happens. But it's interesting that he says, I don't want to talk about them. And he says, well, why not? Well, because they're horrible. That is not somebody deflecting. So my first time watching this, I was like, oh, he's making it up. He doesn't seem like he's under. But there are answers to some of these questions that make me go, oh, shit. This guy isn't acting. He's actually hypnotized. He's actually being regressed right now. And another thing I want to point out here, he says, can you describe them? I don't know. What does it look like? He says they're small. This is important. This is very important here. And this is why hypnosis is kind of frowned upon. This regression hypnotist isn't doing a great job. This line here, how small is small? 3 foot, 4 foot? It's a leading question. It's really easy if somebody were making up a story to say, oh, they're 3 foot or they're 4 foot, or a lot of times they'll shoot, they're 3.5 foot because you gave them a parameter to go through. But look at his response. They're like a little 5-year-old. So he didn't take the suggestion, he gave his own response, which is, for me, it lends authenticity to it. I really like that answering. As soon as I saw that for the first time, I said, oh, this is it. This guy's really hypnotized. He's really regressed. And then, of course, the emotional reaction to the light. I want everybody to hear that sudden intake of breath that he's got. It really like drives home the emotional part of this. So again, we're looking at like the childlike reaction. This is what a child would do, because very, very similar to what a child would do when they see a bright light. And even when he becomes used to the light, he's still covering his face like a kid. Really interesting reactions. Really interesting.
And I suppose you could even say
We
that.
get no audio from the vid on stream.
Oh, do you not?
Pee pee poo
Oh
poo.
no.
Oh no, jeez. Hold on. Let's fix that. Let's fix that right now. Oh, jeez. I am so sorry. I'm going to run this for just a second. I'm going to try to pick up on some audio. Figure out where it's coming from.
I also felt like being a kid.
The small?
Yes.
I love the comment.
How small is small? 3 foot, 4
There we
foot?
go. All right.
Like,
We got it. We got audio in there now. We're going to go ahead and loop. We're going to start this back over. Hold on just a second.
There we go.
Let me flip over. I need to see chat for just a second. Our layout's a little funny tonight. Thank you, Blip. I appreciate that. Sorry, we're playing with some layouts, trying to make things more, trying to make things a little bit better for 2 people instead of 1. That's my fault. I'm sorry. I should have checked that sooner. Let's rewatch. We're going to rewatch the whole thing so everybody can hear the audio.
it's about 20 foot wide.
About 20 foot wide.
About 14 foot out.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom's spinning. There's some windows in it. Some dark windows. There's a light coming from underneath. I'm getting back into the car. I'm going. The bloody car won't go.
What's happening now?
There's a light. Shining a light.
Keep your eyes closed. Who else is it going?
Horrible. Horrible.
Who's horrible?
There.
Who's they?
I don't want to talk about them.
Why not?
Because they're horrible.
Could you briefly describe?
I don't know.
What do they look like?
They're small.
Yes. How small is small? 3 foot, 4 foot?
Like a little 5-year-old lad.
And how many?
Oh,
Eight.
got probed.
8 of them.
It's about 20 foot wide.
So there you go. Yeah, he definitely got probed. But just, I really like his. I hate to say I like it, but I like his facial. So this is early on. Nothing terrible is really happening yet. He's just seeing a strange object, placid face. But I want to see if I can pause this in just the right spot. See, so something we didn't know is he got back in the car.
Moustache Ray.
The ooh face. Oh, I wish I could pause that in just the right spot. He's doing the ooh, the meme of the old Indian dude doing the ooh. That's the face he's making. Major ooh face. This looks horrible on a giant screen. This is a really old video. But just absolutely wonderful reactions. This is not the way a trained, seasoned police officer would react in a normal circumstance, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that in particular doesn't feel that way. I do feel like, even at the end when he's talking about that they're horrible, he doesn't want to really talk about them. even though you can tell he's distressed, he does keep a certain level of composure that
Yeah.
you would expect. So you can kind of tell he has that background.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So from here, notice the difference in his facial expression. So at the beginning, very calm.
Yeah, they could have used lube at least.
Yes, they could have. But look at his face here, very calm, as opposed to afterward, very sad face. So I will say this is one thing that I don't like about the video is usually with regression hypnosis, I've seen enough of them to know that at this point you have like over dramatic facial expressions. Once the terror has started, you get a lot of like really dramatic eyebrows, like what's her face? The girl from Game of Thrones, the blonde-haired girl. I can't think of her name. Like everybody applauds her because she doesn't use Botox or anything. So she's got really crazy eyebrows and her facial expressions are really super. You can't see because I wear glasses, but you would expect
Amelia Clark.
that's it. Amelia Clark. Yeah. Let's I hesitate to Google Amelia Clark. There's no telling what's going to come up, but she's got great eyebrows. She does great facial expressions. This is the kind of facial expression you'd expect for somebody. This is the face I'm looking for right here. This is the kind of facial expression you would expect from somebody under hypnosis. Really very defined. Like she does a great job of showing emotion on her face. And this is why I bring her up, because these are the kind of eyebrows you'd expect to see. This one, this is the eyebrow I expected to see on this guy's face at this point. Like very sharply defined, but you can definitely tell that there is some emotional distress here. It's very different from what it was at the beginning. Regression hypnosis is so interesting to me. I love this. And it's so rare that we have actual video. A lot of times it's just audio. Yeah, look at that. Absolute horror. Not horror, but like, I would call it more like disdain or disgust, sadness, maybe. What did he said at the beginning of Act 2? That he was feeling
Brother EWW.
brother. Ooh, yeah, that's the face. Let's see. Geez, there was a line there. As soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what they. He spoke of medical procedures, restraint, and a sense of helplessness. That's the face I'm looking for. A sense of helplessness. That's exactly what we got here. So it's great that we're getting correlations between his hypnotic.
Maybe he's disgusted cause he liked it.
Maybe. I mean, it was the 80s. Guys weren't allowed to like things like that back then. So
I think just in general, I mean, looking at his face, I do feel like he definitely believes something happened to him. And you know, that's unfortunate. I do wonder if that's what happened to him or if something else happened to him and that's what he has decided happened to him and that's how he's replacing that traumatic memory. And I don't know.
And you know, that's something we talked about, I talked about during the Fourth Kind episode, a couple episodes back, where so many people were being regressed that they were wondering if the imagery of the owl was a placeholder for something other than alien abduction. But canonically speaking, alien abduction does use an owl as a placeholder. It's used all over the world. And I don't know. It's really hard to read. This would be a great place for Paul to come in and give us his 2 cents, because he would know exactly what to say, and he would know exactly what to think about something like this. But We're going to need to move forward, folks. But before we do, take a quick bathroom break. And we're going to get into Act 3, where we're going to start talking about the aftermath of the regression hypnosis session. So hold your horses, folks. We'll be right back. So quickly that many drivers never realized what was happening until it was too late. A man standing near the riverbank saw the bridge fall in sections like a folding deck of cards. The truck driver who survived the fall said it felt like the road simply disappeared beneath him. Rescue efforts began immediately, but the conditions made recovery difficult. Boats from both sides of the river rushed to the scene. Some survivors clung to the debris, shouting for help. Others were trapped in their vehicles underwater. Emergency responders pulled as many people as they could from the river, but many sank with their cars before help arrived. We have so ingrained ourselves with the concept that rats and mice deliver disease and viruses that, unless they're kept as a pet, we don't want them in our homes. Straight up. Rat poison, mice traps, glue traps. You could buy these things at Walmart. And it's there for a reason, because we're so heavily ingrained in the idea that we don't want mice in our homes. And that goes back to rabies, to the bubonic plague. Rats were the big spreaders. Simple as that. Didn't expect that. I really didn't. Awesome. Cool. We're losing people, but that's fine. We're going to move on forward, folks. So now you've heard the foundation of what the Bridgewater Triangle is. We're going to tie off into Act 2. And in Act 2, we're going to talk about some of the things that have been reported in the Bridgewater Triangle. All right? We're moving on to Act 2, everybody. Act 2. For many, learning this feels wrong. Not surprising, but wrong, as if someone changed the script after the fact. And that pattern keeps repeating. Visual memory, something people trust dearly, becomes the next battleground. Consider the Fruit of the Loom logo. A pile of fruit, apples, grapes, leaves, behind it a brown wicker cornucopia. For many people, this wasn't just a logo, it was the first place they learned what a cornucopia was. They remember asking parents about it. They remembered associating it with Thanksgiving imagery. But no official Fruit of the Loom logo has ever included a cornucopia. Trademark filings, historical ads, vintage clothing tags, every version lacks it. The fruit floats alone. For those affected, this feels less like misremembering and more like erasure. Something familiar is missing, but the absence itself becomes unsettling. Something happened to them, something real enough to fracture memory, rattle belief, and to haunt every quiet moment that followed. The names may not be as widely recognized as Travis Walton or Betty and Barney Hill, also in Season 1 if you guys are interested. But to those who study the abduction phenomena closely, the Allagash Four were legends, not because they wanted to be, but because they couldn't deny what had happened. The men reunited only rarely in the decades that followed. The bond remained, though it had changed. Each dealt the weight from the experience differently. Those freaking gingers, jeez. Aliens. Wait, we got something good? I guess the best thing I got for a ginger is this.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lit liquor?
A 1999 Taunton Daily Gazette article titled "The Man Who Isn't There" compiled police logs over 20 similar calls dating back to the 1960s. While not a cryptid in the biological sense, the Phantom Hitchhiker fits the triangle's pattern of overlapping folklore. Half ghost story, half modern myth tied to the same stretch of road that borders the swamp. Okay, we're back.
I love that the clip of you on the bathroom break was you just like talking trash about gingers. At that point, I did think at that point that no one realized you were married to a ginger, probably.
I've said something before that you were redhead. It's okay. I wasn't digging on you.
The leprechauns will come for you soon. Don't worry.
So Say again?
The leprechauns will come for you soon.
Yes, they will. Okay, well, let's get into Act 3. This is where the focus shifts away from memory perception and onto something that's harder to dismiss, and that's the physical evidence aspect of this investigation. Y'all ready for Act 3? Act 3. This is Act 3. I say Act 3 like I say the act a number of times in a row, and I know you'll appreciate this because of my upbringing with NPR and This American Life.
Oh yeah, it does. It does have a This American Life feel to it.
Yeah, this is it. This is Act 3, everybody. This is my hourglass impression. You ready?
That's it.
This is Act 3, everybody. Act 3 with the evidence.
Please don't come for us. We don't have.
Where the evidence is
we don't have the
too
kind of
hard
money
to
to pay
dismiss.
that one off.
I think the first time I mentioned NPR and This American Life on the podcast, somebody was like, "What's NPR?" Like, okay, hold on. I said, hold the phone. We got to talk about this right quick. Then I had to go on like a 20-something minute spiel about NPR and what This American Life was. And it took every ounce of strength not to play a clip of Hourglass saying, "This is Act 2, everybody, Act 2, where the stories come together and really form a final point." Somebody out there that listens to NPR is probably slapping their knee right now. Rolling. Anywho, so let's get into Act 3, everybody. This is Act 3. Act 3. Act 3. So as controversial as the hypnotic regression sessions were, they weren't the only reason the Todmorden incident refused to fade. If the case rested solely on recovered memories, it would have been easy to dismiss as a psychological episode amplified by suggestion and stress. But what kept the story alive, especially among investigators who were otherwise skeptical, was the presence of physical details and independent reports that did not rely on hypnosis at all. The first of these was the road itself. So when officers examined the section of Burnley Road where Godfrey said the object had been, they noted unusual markings on the surface, and these were not consistent with skid marks, tire impressions, or damage caused by standard vehicles. The disturbance appeared localized and circular, as though something had interacted with the ground in a way that didn't match normal traffic patterns. While none of these marks were dramatic enough to be considered definitive proof of anything extraordinary, they were strange enough to resist easy explanation. More importantly, those markings existed independently of Godfrey's memory gap. They were observed by others, documented, photographed, even skeptics.
Hey, skid marks.
I was waiting. Somebody was going to pick up on it. Within a relatively short period after Godfrey's encounter, other residents in and around Todmorden began reporting unusual aerial phenomena. Lights in the sky, objects moving silently at low altitude, shapes that didn't resemble conventional aircraft. Individually, these reports might have been dismissed as unrelated or misidentified, but taken together they suggested a broader pattern of activity in the area during that time. One of the most striking aspects of these reports was the timing. Several occurred in early morning hours, much like Godfrey's encounter. Others described objects moving along familiar routes as if following roads or terrain features rather than flying randomly overhead. And this detail would come up again and again in UFO cases worldwide, but in Todmorden, it added to the growing sense that whatever was happening wasn't entirely random. And there was also the matter of consistency. Witnesses described similar shapes and behaviors despite having no connection to one another. Some spoke of diamond-like or angular objects. Others mentioned a lack of engine noise or the absence of visible propulsion. These were not grand displays in the sky. They were close, quiet, and unsettlingly deliberate. Skeptics, of course, pushed back. They argued that once the story gains public attention, it can influence how people interpret ordinary events. Light in the sky becomes UFO. A strange noise becomes something more ominous, and that argument holds weight in many cases, but it doesn't fully account for reports that predated widespread media coverage or came from individuals with no apparent interest in UFOs at all. Another complicating factor was Godfrey's continued consistency. Over time, he was interviewed repeatedly by journalists, researchers, and documentarians. Stories often change under that kind of pressure. Details shift, timelines blur, but Godfrey's account of the core event, the object in the road, the radio failure, the missing time, remained remarkably stable. Even when discussing the hypnosis session, he was careful to separate what he remembered consciously from what emerged later under regression. And that distinction mattered to investigators who approached the case with caution rather than belief. Wow, I just noticed how far behind YouTube was. YouTube is like 30 minutes behind us. They haven't, I don't think YouTube's even...
Before the break.
Yeah, that was before the break. We haven't even seen YouTube hasn't even seen the video yet. The distinction mattered to investigators who approached the case with caution rather than belief. It suggested that Godfrey was not trying to convince anyone of a specific explanation. He was reporting what he experienced and acknowledging the limits of his own certainty. There was also a deeper layer of discomfort that emerged as the case was revisited in later years. Godfrey admitted that the incident had lasting effects, not dramatic psychological collapse or paranoia, but subtle changes, heightened anxiety, increased awareness, a lingering sense that something had intruded his life without permission. And these reactions are not uncommon in people who experience unexplained or traumatic events, regardless of whether those events have paranormal explanation. But what made his case unusual was that these effects were rooted in an experience he could not fully remember. And in the years that followed, Todmorden developed a quiet reputation as a hotspot for strange activity. UFO sightings weren't constant, but they were persistent enough to attract attention. And the town's geography, its valleys, hills, isolated roads, was often cited as possible factor that though no clear explanation ever emerged. Some researchers speculated about military testing or experimental aircraft, and others pointed out that no known projects matched the descriptions provided by witnesses, nor could they explain the missing time or the physical markings. Weather phenomena were suggested and disregarded quickly, and optical illusions were proposed, then challenged by the close-up range of nature of several sightings. The case sat in an uncomfortable middle ground, too strange to ignore, too incomplete to conclusively explain, and that middle ground is where the Todmorden incident still lives today. As the decades passed, new generations discovered the stories, books were written, documentaries produced, podcasts talked about the subject. I always love it. That wasn't in the script, but I threw it in the podcasting. Wow, I lost my spot. Each retelling added analysis, but none added closure. The same questions persisted. What was the object? What happened during the missing time, and why did a trained police officer encounter something so profoundly outside his experience? And by the time modern UFO discourse began to shift toward discussions of unidentified aerial phenomena and government transparency, the Todmorden incident felt less like an outlier and more like a precursor. A case that had arrived too early before the language and framework existed to discuss it seriously. And in Act 4, we'll examine the long-term fallout of the case, how it affected Godfrey's career, and how authorities handled the incident, and why, despite decades of skepticism and ridicule, the Todmorden incident refuses to be written off as just another strange story from a foggy English road. So, Act 3 was more of a recap. There wasn't too much of a... There wasn't a great apex there, but we do see some similarities between his story and a lot of stories of people that do interact with UFOs. There was one UFO case similar to this. While I look this up, do you have any thoughts on Act 3?
I mean, I have some, but they're not like uplifting thoughts. I have like this theory in the back of my mind that like I would much rather believe this was an alien abduction where this man lost time. I would really like to believe that. But at this point, that's not really what I believe. And I feel like, unfortunately, what I believe is that something really awful happened to this man. And he has used this story, like this is the way his brain is allowing him to live with that. And I don't know, you know, I mean, I hope that's not true, but that's the way I'm leaning.
I can't find the case that I was looking for, but there was one. Maybe it was season 1. Geez, it might have been early season 2. This is gonna just rack my brain until I figured out what it is. Was it the Aurora, Texas UFO incident? No. I just don't remember exactly what it was. So we did have a UFO incident where a group of guys were fishing on a bank in Louisiana, and they had seen a UFO. It came down, they lost time, and they did the same thing. They did the regression hypnosis sessions, and they were ostracized for it because this was, I want to say it was like the 50s or 60s when it happened. Maybe the 70s. I don't remember exactly what it was.
I remember this story. I don't remember the time period, but I remember them all telling the same story, even though they were separate for it. And it was like, it wasn't like they had rehearsed it. It was like to the T, just like we would talk about having sat here tonight. Like it was as though they were actually in the same place.
Yeah, so that was the case where the aliens had weird, like 1950s look to it. They were metallic and tall, had long spindly arms. They had points on all the front 3 sides of their face. But they were completely ostracized for coming out and saying that they think that they were abducted by aliens. And my favorite thing about that part of that investigation was they went to the police immediately afterward. And they did their interview, and the police left the recorder running in the room while they left the room. They said, all right, we're going to go in the other room and we're going to talk about it, leave you guys just for a few minutes. We'll be right back. So the police officers leave the room, and it was 2 of the guys. It was a younger guy, like in his 20s, and an older fella in his 50s. And it was that little snip of audio that made me believe that what they saw was real, because they were like, I just don't know what we saw. But I know that didn't come from planet Earth, and I know those weren't humans. And it was great because the police officers had the foresight of leaving the recorder running when they left the room, because this is a common tactic with criminal justice, is they'll leave the recorder running in the room and leave the room with 2 suspects in the room thinking they're going to try to get their stories straight and they're going to get them recorded, where this worked in the opposite side of that coin, where they just further validated the story because they were so confused and scared. And they're like, look, I don't even think I want to talk about it anymore because they obviously don't believe us. You know, and the kid, the 20-year-old started crying. And it was a great piece of audio. And I can only hope for more evidence like that in the future. But I think that's what we're dealing with here, is we've got a single individual who, unfortunately, this is the trend when people in a seat of power come out and say, hey, I saw something strange. And this is why pilots don't report UFOs when they see them, because they will be run out and they won't have a job anymore. Police officers don't often tell their story unless it's a absolutely magnificent story with crazy twists and, you know, amazing pieces of information and evidence that they can support it with. If they don't have that, they become ostracized. They become a pariah within their, you know, the legal system, and they're often pushed out. And I think that's what happened to Mr. Godfrey here.
So I think I'm somewhere in between the theory I said before you were talking about the folks in the boat, and what you just said. Like that, I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm positioned somewhere in between there, right? Like, And I think that's partially because we watch a lot of X-Files.
Yes, we do.
And there's always some, some of them are aliens, and then some of them it's just the government conspiracy. And so in my mind, probably because what I intake is what I'm pushing out, is that there's some type of cross between, like in this particular case. I'm a little bit more on the fence with the guys that were in the boat, because there were so many of them and they all told the same story. With this man, especially I've kind of peeked over your shoulder a little bit to read the first part of Act 4. And so just with what happened to him, it makes me wonder if something really awful happened to him. He's using this to justify it in his brain, but maybe there wasn't some type of deeper conspiracy there, and other people were involved in this situation who didn't want it to come out that they were involved.
Sure.
Yeah,
it's not an unheard of piece of information.
Yeah.
There are deeper conspiracy theories about government experimentation with people missing time. It does happen. Unfortunately, we don't have evidence to prove any of that. But there are cases where this does happen. I don't necessarily feel that this is one of those cases. I will say that, the obvious sign here is that it's a very isolated place. It would be easy for a government to come through and pick somebody up and play with their brain or whatever. But historically speaking, we don't have that type of thing happening in the UK. Here in the United States, sure. But in the UK, we don't hear a lot about, like, MK Ultra was a huge thing here in the United States. We don't hear anything about MK Ultra in the UK. So it makes me feel like there isn't a government finger in this pie. You see what I'm saying? So, you ready to tie off into Act 4? Let's get into Act 4, everybody. Act 4, everybody. This is Act 4. So by the time the initial shock of the Todmorden incident faded, the consequences were already taking shape. Not in some dramatic, immediate way, but slowly, quietly, in ways that would follow Alan Godfrey for the rest of his career. UFO encounters don't usually end with a single event. They linger, reshaping how a person is perceived long after the night itself has passed. Within the police force, the reaction remained divided. Some colleagues accepted that Godfrey had experienced something genuinely unexplained, while others viewed the incident as an embarrassment, an anomaly best minimized and forgotten. Officially, there was no conclusion. No disciplinary action was taken, and there was no effort to seriously investigate the encounter beyond the initial review. The case was filed, acknowledged, and then allowed to drift into administrative gray area. And that quiet distancing spoke volumes. Police departments relied on credibility and public trust, and unexplained UFO encounters don't fit neatly into either. Godfrey was not accused of dishonesty, but he was subtly sidelined. The incident became something that followed him into conversations, evaluations, and interactions he could never fully escape. Even when unspoken, it was there. Outside the force, public reaction was far less restrained. Media coverage ranged from cautious curiosity to outright ridicule. Headlines leaned toward humor. Late-night commentary treated the story as a novelty. Skeptics seized on the hypnosis sessions as evidence that the entire case could be dismissed outright. In the public imagination, Godfrey had become less a police officer and more a character in a strange story. An identity he never asked for and could not easily shed. But what complicated matters further was Godfrey's refusal to back away from his account. He did not escalate it, and he didn't embellish it, but he also didn't retract it.
For what it's worth, the UK did all kinds of funky experiments on the public too.
Oh, I know if anybody would know, you would, Blip. I need to probe that a little deeper, because I just don't know. I'm sure there's a UK equivalent of MK Ultra.
I mean, when you first said that, my first thought was, well, they've been around longer than us, so I'm sure they've had plenty of time to perfect things.
Oh, geez, I lost my count. I lost my place. What complicated matters further that was Godfrey's refusal to back away from his account. He didn't escalate it, he didn't embellish it, but he also didn't retract it. Over the years, when asked, he maintained the same core position. He encountered an unexplained object, lost time, and could not account for what had happened during the gap. That consistency frustrated critics who expected the story to collapse under scrutiny. It also made the case harder to ignore. And as the UFO field matured, slowly moving away from sensationalism towards case analysis, researchers began re-examining older accounts with fresh eyes. The Todmorden incident stood out because it checked boxes many others didn't. A trained observer, contemporaneous documentation, physical traces, and a timeline that could be independently verified. But still, no official explanation emerged. The British government offered no statement beyond acknowledging that no aircraft were operating in the area at that time. Military testing theories failed to align with the object's described behavior and shape. Experimental craft explanations struggled to account for the missing time and the radio failure. Each theory explained the part of the case, but none explained all of it. And Godfrey himself retired from the police force, eventually. And retirement did not bring anonymity. If anything, it made him more accessible to researchers and journalists. Interviews continued, documentaries revisited the case, each retelling added layers of analysis, but the core of the mystery remained unchanged. And what's often overlooked in discussions of UFO cases is the personal cost. Godfrey spoke openly about the strain the incident placed on his life. Not in a dramatic, sensational way, but in a slow erosion of normalcy. The constant questioning, the skepticism, the sense that a single unexplained moment had permanently altered how others saw him. And yet, he never framed himself as the victim. And that refusal to dramatize his own experience is part of what continues to lend the case's credibility. Godfrey didn't claim special insight. He didn't position himself as chosen or enlightened. He described an event that happened to him, not one that defined him. And as time passed, the cultural context around UFOs began to shift. Government agencies in multiple countries quietly adjusted their language, moving away from flying saucers and toward unidentified aerial phenomena. Discussions of radar data, pilot encounters, and official reports entered the mainstream in a way they'd never before. And in that environment, the Todmorden incident felt less absurd than it once had. What had once been dismissed as a fringe story now resembled cases taken seriously decades later. The elements that once triggered ridicule, missing time, close encounters, equipment failure, were now recognized as recurring features in modern reports. But that shift didn't prove anything retroactively. It didn't validate every detail of Godfrey's experience. But it did change the question being asked. Instead of, did this really happen? The conversation slowly became, what could cause something like this? And that's where this case becomes genuinely unsettling. Because if the Todmorden incident was not a hoax, not a hallucination, and not a misidentified aircraft, then it represents something fundamentally unknown interacting with ordinary reality in a very direct way. Not in the sky, not in the distance, but on a road, in front of a police officer, in a moment that disrupted time itself. In our final act, Act 5, we'll pull everything together, looking at the strongest skeptical explanations, the arguments that refuse to go away, and why more than 40 years later the Todmorden incident still sits uncomfortably between belief and disbelief.
That's where I am. I am sitting uncomfortably between belief and disbelief. What an interesting experience it is to be human. Like, thinking about, all of these different stories. Which ones are real, which ones are not, which ones were made up on purpose, which ones were sort of just created by someone based on something that happened in our brain in a response to a traumatic event. Like, it's impossible to really know exactly what happened in any situation, much less in all of them. But
Right.
this one in particular, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. This one just, it makes me feel really sad. I feel really sad for this man. Because whether it was real or not, whether it actually happened to him or not, I don't know. I feel like this definitely changed the course of his life one way or the other.
And unfortunately, that's a common thing. And that's why a lot of people in positions of authority don't come forward with their tales. Aside from this, I don't think we have another case in the UK of a police officer coming forward and saying, hey, I saw a UFO last night. Furthermore, inversely, in Australia, they only have one account of a police officer coming in contact with the UFO. And they preserved everything. They put his car in the museum. They took pictures. They've got framed photos of the event. They took it to heart. They loved it. And, it shows the social aspect of what people are accepting of. Yeah.
Well, what's Todmorden like now?
That's
you
what I
said
was
that there's an alien.
That's what I was wanting to look at. I was wanting to take a second. Let's do what I love doing most. And let's look at Todmorden today. I was wondering if there was something. The toothless mug. Yeah. Oh, okay. There's an astronomy center there. That's interesting. So that tells me that this area has astrological significance. Oh, let's see. We got some castles, some ranches, a bunch of places to get drinks, bunch of little hotels. I don't see, right offhand, any place that says the Todmorden UFO Museum. Let's see, what do we got? Nothing. I search for Todmorden UFO. Usually something will come up. What did he say? Burnley? Yeah, there's Burnley Road right there. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that says, something related to UFOs or anything. Oh, look, there's an Aldi. Yes, so Burnley Road runs from the middle of Todmorden all the way out of town. I'm assuming at the time this wasn't as populated as it is today. But so the case we had last week, was it last week? We did the same thing, and we found a whole park dedicated to a UFO landing, or 2 UFO landings. I am not seeing that here. I would like to know precisely where, this is the road here, the main road heading northwest, and I don't see a single thing.
It might be worth Googling separately just to see if there's any UFO or festivals. Remember that the one we did last week had a whole festival, and there were people dressed up, there were people on stage dressed up playing guitar.
There is no single permanent annual event.
It is renowned as a UFO hotspot, though.
Consequently, afterward, though.
Yeah. But, no one involved in this incident appears to have their name on a road or on a state park, so.
No, I'm definitely not seeing, so there's a meet, regular, often monthly meetings, but.
At the Golden Lion Pub.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
So where's the Golden Lion?
I feel like my quality of life would be greatly improved by going to that meeting, which is way too far away for us to go to. So, unfortunately.
The Golden Lion. Let's see. I'm not seeing like anything directly relating to a UFO.
So this is like basically the equivalent of the older gentlemen who meet up for coffee here at cafes and restaurants, and a random table.
Yeah,
in the course of the day.
It's funny. It's not even on Burnley Road. Anywho, that's again. This is one of the first questions we ask in an investigation: who's making money off of this? I don't see anybody making money off of this, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good sign in that direction for sure. For sure.
All right, well, let's rip through Act 5. Let's take care of this thing. Let's put a little bow on this little bad boy and come to conclusions. This is Act 5, everybody. Act 5. So more than 4 decades after a police officer stepped out of his car on a dark road near Todmorden, the case remains unresolved. Not because it lacks information, but because no single explanation accounts for everything that happened. The Todmorden incident endures in that uncomfortable space where evidence exists, testimony holds steady, and certainty remains out of reach. The most straightforward skeptical explanation is psychological. Godfrey could have experienced a dissociative episode, a brief blackout, or a stress-related lapse in consciousness. And under this interpretation, the object in the road may have been misidentified and the missing time filled in later through imagination and hypnosis. This theory has its merit. Human memory is fragile, especially under circumstances, and hypnosis is known to produce vivid but unreliable recollections. But this explanation struggles with the timing and documentation. The sketch in Godfrey's notebook was drawn before the missing time occurred. The radio malfunction happened at the moment of the encounter, not afterward. The road markings were observed by others. These details don't prove an extraordinary explanation, but they complicate a purely internal one. Another proposed explanation involves experimental or secret aircraft. Britain, like many countries, conducted classified testing during Cold War. And not all projects were publicly acknowledged at the time. However, we know today, through declassification, that there's nothing in the sky that looks like that craft. So we can throw that one right out the window.
Yeah.
And not all projects were publicly acknowledged at the time. Could Godfrey have encountered an unknown military craft? Not likely. I don't think so. But again, this theory falls short. No known test platforms match the object's described shape, silent orientation, or behavior. And more importantly, it does nothing to explain the missing time or the physical effects on Godfrey himself. Environmental explanations also have been suggested. Fog, lighting conditions, fatigue can distort perception, especially in the early morning hours. And these factors may explain misidentification, but they don't easily account for the consistency of Godfrey's account or the independent reports that followed. And then there's the explanation that makes everyone uncomfortable, that something genuinely unknown was present. Accepting that possibility doesn't require believing every detail recovered under hypnosis. It doesn't require concluding that Godfrey was abducted or experimented on. It only requires acknowledging that an unexplained object interacted with a human being in a way that disrupted time, memory, and normal physical processes. That idea is unsettlingly precise because it doesn't offer answers, only implications. If the Todmorden incident represents a real encounter with an unknown phenomena, then it wasn't dramatic or cinematic. There were no mass sightings, no global panic, just a quiet intrusion on a routine patrol, witnessed by someone trained to observe and report accurately. That ordinariness is what makes the case linger. Godfrey never claimed certainty about what happened during those missing 25 minutes. What he claimed consistently was that something occurred that he could not explain. and that the official record reflected that reality. His willingness to live with ambiguity rather than force a conclusion may be the most credible aspect of the entire case. Today, the Todmorden incident is often cited alongside other police and military encounters as an early example of a phenomenon that would later be taken much more seriously. Not because it provides answers, but because it raises the right questions. What happens when an unexplained event intersects with trained observation? What happens when time itself becomes unreliable? And how do institutions respond when reality refuses to fit into established categories? Those questions remain unsolved. And perhaps that's the point. The Todmorden incident doesn't demand belief, it demands attention. It challenges easy explanations and resists dismissal, whether it represents a psychological anomaly, classified experiment, or something entirely unknown. It stands as a reminder that there are moments, rare, unsettling moments, where certainty collapses and we are left with nothing but testimony, traces, and unanswered questions. And in that space, belief and disbelief. The shadow lingers. Okay, so we've done it. We've made it through the entire investigation. We survived without the government shutting down our internet. Look how far behind YouTube is. They're still watching the regression video.
Well, yeah, they got to monitor some way, don't they?
There's a major delay between what's streaming and what's on YouTube right now. That's interesting because that didn't happen last week. I mean, we had a couple minutes at the beginning of the stream, but that shouldn't put
We are experiencing blizzard conditions.
Look, it's like we are here.
Wow.
There's like 30 minutes. It's like 30 minutes behind. That's so weird.
Hello, us from the past.
Hello, past us. Yeah, we're so strange. So what are you thinking? Tell me all about it.
Oh my goodness. How do I put this coherently?
YouTube's missing time.
Yeah,
Yes,
YouTube
exactly.
is missing time.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, almost the exact amount that was in this
Almost
episode.
25 minutes behind.
Interesting. I don't know.
It's space aliens, right? It goes without saying, it's fucking space aliens.
I don't know. I'm the skeptic anyway. And so I'm not ready to say that this man was abducted.
Okay.
But I am ready to say that I believe him that something really awful happened to him.
You believe that he believes?
Yeah, I believe that he believes that version of the story. And I also believe that unfortunately he had a really bad night. And I don't know what that means. But I do feel bad for him. And yeah, I mean, I feel bad for this 1980s police officer in the UK. And really, I mean, it could be nothing at all happened, right? But I think from what we've heard and what we've analyzed and talked about, my belief is something did happen. I just don't know. If it was aliens, crazy hair.
Crazy hair. Yeah, wait, we have that. There you go. Aliens. Okay. Good point. Good points. I'm going to break it down. Let me break this thing down for you right quick. Going off the regression hypnosis, seeing his reactions, I can't think of anything that could happen to a normal person that would make him react like that in a regression hypnosis setting. And sure, we didn't get all the answers from the regression, but this is common. And they regressed Betty and Barney Hill 30-something times before they got the whole story. It looks like they only regressed him once. Sometimes it does take more than one session to get through. And this is, I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on here. This is the part of why they're so successful with alien abductions, because they're so good at blocking memories. Going back to the Fourth Kind episode, they blocked their memories so good that they had violent outbursts during their regression to force them to stop the regression hypnosis sessions. And they planted imagery. So I think that this guy legitimately was abducted. And I'd like that they didn't answer all the questions, because it doesn't give the air of certainty, like a final period wasn't put on the end of the sentence. That because all the questions weren't answered, that it makes me feel more like this is really, I'm talking in a circle here, but looking at all of the evidence, he sketched this thing out before he lost time. He still had the sketch. And they came back the next day. They found markings on the road. I would have loved to have found photos. Apparently, they didn't take photos. I couldn't find any photos of the road. Of course, they didn't take photos. It's the only thing that I don't agree with. They didn't take photos of the road. But you're dealing with the social stigma of a police officer coming forward talking about an alien abduction. They probably were just like, yeah, send a couple of the guys out. We'll see what we can find. They didn't think to take camera. I think this guy legitimately was abducted. Mostly because his consistency of his story, it never changed. This guy never wrote a book. And, I've found a couple interviews recently where he went back and watched the same footage of him being hypnotized. And you could see his reaction to his hypnosis tape was nearly the same. Like, he starts wringing his hands. He's touching his face, and he starts physically sweating in the interview. Oh, little old man freaking out. I would have loved to have shown that, but we could only get away with so much copyrighted material on the show. But this is one of the few cases where we have lots of evidence. Whereas, 3/4 of all the other alien abduction cases, we have no evidence other than firsthand testimony. I couldn't tell you how many of them I've said, yes, this is real to, where all we had was firsthand testimony. The same thing that I said during the case for the 3 guys on the bank in Louisiana that saw a UFO. I said that case was real because the description of the aliens, the description of the craft, everything was so unique. Like, I went through and I was like, what was the popular science fiction movie of that era? And it didn't match up to anything that year or before. It was so unique. And to this day, we've never seen another UFO or, extraterrestrial like that case. And I feel like this is the same. We don't see a lot of diamond-shaped UFOs. We've seen a few over time, but nothing before 1980. Traditionally speaking, it's a saucer shape. I'm going to say that this really happened. I'm convinced that it really happened.
So I think that means that you can push the button you want to push because you're in charge.
Oh no,
you're in charge.
It takes 2 votes to get a yes
well,
now.
then maybe we should poll the audience.
All right.
Should we poll the audience?
Yes. So anybody watching, what do you think? Did this really happen? Or is this some confabulation of this man's memory? Anybody watching is welcome to chime in. I mean, YouTube's going to be way behind. I'm sure they're going to be like, yeah, in 20 minutes after we've ended the stream.
Victus needs to know which button to push. I'm not helpful tonight.
I mean, you can say undecided.
I feel undecided. I do, and I know that most people are gonna go, I just can't believe it.
It's a textbook. It's almost archetypal.
It is. But in the 1980s, we didn't really have. I mean, we had a standard Project Blue Book. Blue Book had come and gone, But a lot of the things that we saw in Project Blue Book, which was the social norm for alien abductions and UFO encounters, we don't see any of the things from like Project Blue Book era evident in this case. I feel like this is unique enough and it's consistent enough.
So, I mean, I just think there's some things that overlap with some others. And, I mean, this man could have, I don't know, there just could have been some things that this diamond shape could have come from something else that was diamond shaped in what actually happened in that memory. I don't know. I'm just having a hard time with it. Like the pants you talked about, the pants and the scuffing of the shoes and the pants and all that stuff. That's physical evidence, and that's what you're talking about with the evidence, correct?
Yeah.
So is it possible that a group of people or a person could have done something to this man and, you know, his uniform was messed up because he, you know, was drugged across the pavement, and then his mind just created this.
But what would have made him make the drawing before missing
I don't know.
time?
How did he make that drawing? Like, how did he? I mean, that seems like that would have taken more than 5 minutes.
I mean,
How did he?
I keep a notebook in my pocket at work. I take notes constantly.
Yeah.
That's why I keep a notebook in my pocket at work, because I need to make notes.
Yeah.
Police officers keep a notebook in their pocket.
Notes I could see, but that was a really detailed drawing. I don't know. I'm still undecided.
I could draw something that detailed that quickly.
I know you could. I could not. I do stick figures.
Well, okay. I guess we're undecided then. This week we're undecided. I say yes. She's undecided. So, we don't have a sound for undecided yet. I have a spot for one more audio clip. I just haven't come up with a sound for undecided yet. So we get a lint liquor.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
I was gonna say wah wah.
Yeah. That sounds too much like a no. We need like a sound clip from like Family Guy, somebody going, something. We'll come up with something. But we're gonna say undecided this week. Unfortunately, I said yes, she's undecided, so that means undecided. It's a two vote system now. Or before it was just me taking the helm and I could do what I wanted, but
You can still do what you want. Don't let me steer this ship wrong.
that's not how this works. So if Aeon were here, he would have a say. So I guess when Aeon comes back, we'll have a way
It's
to
a
break.
decent case as far as cases go.
It is a good case. There's good evidence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
few cases have evidence.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
That's why I say something happened to him, for sure. But
I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's any convincing you at this point. We're going to talk about this the rest of the night, I'm sure. She's going to think on it for a couple days and then come back and be like, you know what? I think it's a no, or I think it's a yes.
I'll just go live by myself with the cat and be like, guess what?
We'll see. We'll if we talk about it again during the week, we'll talk about it next week. So I guess that's it for this week, everybody. An undecided Vine Boom. There you go. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you, everybody watching on YouTube. I sincerely hope that when we stop streaming that it doesn't, or well, I guess no, my thing could just be behind.
Yeah, maybe so.
Let me refresh that. I bet it'll catch up when I refresh it. I bet it will. Watch. Yeah, look. Now we're caught up.
Mostly.
So I was just worried that if we stopped streaming, that it would kill the YouTube stream. So I guess that's it for tonight. We have an undecided result. It happens. That's the way it goes. Before we get going, let's see if we've got anybody to raid. Oh, look, Hef is streaming. Let's raid Hef. We raided him last week. Yes. We'll raid half. So before we get going, I want to give a shout out to everybody that watched tonight. Thank you, everybody on YouTube, everybody on Facebook, probably like 1 or 2 people on Facebook, everybody on Twitch watching. I know, James, you're here every week. Thanks for being here. Blip, Monamu came through. Hef popped in for a little bit. Where's my chat box so I can read out who's all been in here? Blip, Monamu. Oh, auto scroll is on. I can't scroll back up. Yeah, James came from YouTube. Thank you to our bot, our wonderful bot that popped in. You suck. Don't ever
Have a
come
nice
back.
week. Was nice to meet the other half.
Yes.
Great to meet you.
I've got one little tiny closing monologue to read before we get out of here, everybody. I will say, if you've got your own personal paranormal tale, case, or claim, you feel free to email at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. We will gladly read your email, your account of what happened to you. If you have a suggestion for a future episode, feel free to email us. You can scan this lovely QR code right above me, and we'll give you a link to all of our socials. We'll see everybody here next Sunday. And if you want to stick around, catch Hef's stream. He's playing Vintage Story. It's a very acquired taste. I played it for a couple hours last night, and not my favorite game, but I was glad to hang out with my buddy. So that being said, let's get into this closing monologue. We're going to get the hell out of here. The Todmorden incident doesn't give us the satisfaction of a clean ending. There's no final revelation, no official explanation that neatly ties everything together. What it gives us instead is something far more uncomfortable. A well-documented encounter involving a trained police officer, physical traces, missing time, and a series of unanswered questions that still don't have convincing answers more than 40 years later. You don't have to believe that this was an alien encounter to find it disturbing. You don't even have to accept that every detail to recognize that something went wrong out there that morning on Burnley Road. Something interrupted a routine patrol. Something interfered with memory, with equipment, and time itself. And whatever it was, it left behind just enough evidence to make dismissal feel dishonest. Cases like this live in the cracks between belief and skepticism. They challenge the idea that reality always behaves the way we expect it to, or that every unexplained event eventually gives up its secrets. Sometimes all we're left with are accounts that refuse to change, traces that don't quite fit, and people who carry the weight of an experience they never asked for. The Todmorden incident reminds us that the unknown doesn't always announce itself with spectacle. Sometimes it appears quietly on an empty road in the early hours, and then it's gone, leaving us to argue over what it meant. Okay? And and maybe that's why these stories endured, not because they prove anything definitively, but because they expose how fragile certainty really is. No matter what you believe about this case, one thing is clear. There are still moments when the world does not behave the way it should. And when it does, the shadows are never far behind. So if you find yourself on a lonely, isolated road in the early hours, and a diamond-shaped craft lands in the middle of the road, take notes. Lots of notes. Start recording. Because you never know when that missing time is going to hit you. But whatever you do, make sure you follow us Beyond the Shadows. Good night, everybody.
Creature like that. How would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs. Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him. Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Space.
right, let's get to work.